Last August, on a warm evening when the cicadas sang in the trees, my wife called me to the kitchen. The air through the open window was thick with the scent of cut grass and the last heat of the day. She pointed to the smooth, dark shapes moving along the base of the persimmon tree outside the window. Ants, thousands of them, a ribbon of tiny bodies following an invisible road up the trunk to the ripening fruit. Their movement so steady it looked like the tree itself was alive and breathing. I opened the cupboard and took out a bottle of white vinegar and a small box of baking soda. My wife gave me a look that said, "Old man, you're home tricks again." But I smiled. I mixed equal parts vinegar and water in a spray bottle, the sharp tang rising into the warm air, and I sprinkled a thin line of baking soda across the entry point at the windowsill, where the grout had cracked a little over the years. The baking soda looked like snow on a dark shelf, a quiet border. By the next morning, the army was retreating. The ants were confused, their path erased, wandering in tight circles on the outside sill as if their map had been stolen. The line of them had broken. That was the day I promised I would share this knowing with anyone who would listen. Today, I will show you 9 ways these two humble ingredients, the baking soda and the vinegar, can solve many pest troubles that usually cost you worry and money. And I have a bonus trick at the end, a combination of both that solved a fruit fly problem I had fought for 2 full summers, one that taught me to look deeper than the surface. I am an old man now. My name is Michael. I was born in a small village in Japan, where the rice paddies stretched to the mountains like a green blanket stitched with water, and the persimmon trees hung heavy with orange fruit in October, so full of sweetness that the branches dipped low enough for a boy to reach. My grandfather was a farmer who never wasted a grain of rice. His hands were rough, cracked like the dry earth after harvest, but they were gentle when he showed me how to hold a seedling. He taught me a word that is the compass of my life. Mottainai. It means the regret of throwing away something that still has purpose, a sadness for waste, a feeling that what you have been given must be used fully, with respect. He would say, "Michael, the world gives you everything you need. Look closely before you look away." When I was a young man, I came to this country, to America, and I have lived here most of my years. I arrived with a small suitcase and a heart full of hope, and I learned to love the wide streets and the generous spirit of the people. I say everything I am about to share with a gentle heart, as a guest who has been welcomed. I have watched this land with eyes that still remember the old ways. A quick word before I go on. What I show you here grows out of the old ways the people of my country kept, where nothing was ever wasted. My family gathered the heart of it into the Home Savings Almanac, 12 small books on the old ways of the home. The kitchen and the pantry, the garden, keeping the house clean and warm. The small repairs, and 400 simple ways to waste nothing and save $200 to $400 a month. You will find it linked in the description and the first pinned comment, or you can simply scan the QR code on your screen. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. My wife and I keep a little garden behind our house, not large but with tomatoes that blushed red in July, basil that smells like memory, and hostas that catch the morning dew. But I have noticed that in this fast country, many people have forgotten the old knowing that was once common in every kitchen. They reach for a spray can before they reach for the baking soda. I want to help you remember. Before we begin, I have a request. Please, in the comments below, tell me where you live and what you grow in your garden, or even just a small pot of chives on the windowsill. I read every one. I love to hear about the herbs, the tomatoes, the quiet battles with aphids. Your stories are like seeds blowing across a fence, and they take root in my mind. It brings me joy. Now, let me start by saying what most folks get wrong. They think that to be rid of pests, you must poison them. You must buy a weapon, something from a bottle with a label full of warnings. But the old way, the way that costs almost nothing, is to understand the creature. Learn how it breathes, how it follows scents, what it loves to eat. Then give it exactly what it wants, with a twist. That is the difference between a battle and a dance. My grandfather used to say, "A wise man does not fight the river. He learns where it flows and plants his seeds there." The university people have since measured these things and confirmed what the old grandmothers knew. Baking soda and vinegar, used with a little patience, can solve more than you imagine. They break down the invisible chains of smell. They change the tiny landscapes that pests need to survive. And you do not need a degree to use them. You only need to watch. The first method is one I saw work with my own eyes many years ago, in a neighbor's kitchen. Her name was Sarah, and she had cockroaches for 2 summers. The kind that scatter when you flick the light, their flat bodies moving with a speed that makes your skin crawl. Her kitchen smelled of old grease and faint insect, a smell you never forget once you know it. She had a cupboard filled with half-empty cans of poison, dried glue traps curled at the edges, a receipt from a pest service for a large sum folded and refolded on the counter. Yet the roaches still scuttled across her floor at night, their antennae twitching. She told me she was embarrassed to have her grandchildren over, her voice quiet with shame. I felt a great mottainai for her, not just for the money wasted, but for the lost peace, the stolen comfort of her own home. I came to her house with a box of baking soda, a bag of powdered sugar, and a jar lid from her own recycling, one of those small metal caps from a pickle jar. I mixed equal parts baking soda and powdered sugar in a small bowl, stirring with my finger until the white powder and the sweet dust were one, a fine blend that clung to the ridges of my fingerprint. You cannot use granulated sugar. It must be powdered, as fine as the soda itself, or the roaches will lick the sugar off and leave the soda behind. I took a few shallow lids, like the cap from a mayonnaise jar, and spooned a small mound into each, a hill no bigger than a child's thumb. I placed them behind the refrigerator where the warm motor hummed, under the sink where the plumbing comes through the wall and the dark was thick, and inside the cabinet where I saw the dark smear marks the roaches leave behind, like a trail written in grease. I told her the roach cannot resist sugar. It is a need built into its body, a command written in its nerves. But when it eats this mixture and then drinks water, as it must, a gas forms in its stomach. A roach cannot burp. Its body has no release. The gas builds until it is too much, and the insect dies. And here is the quiet secret. Roaches are cannibals. They eat the dead, their own fallen. The baking soda then passes from one to another, moving through the colony like a slow fire that consumes from the inside. She looked at me with doubt, her brow creased, but she had tried everything else. Within 3 weeks she called me. Her voice was light, like a window had been opened. She had not seen a roach in days, and the smears under the sink were fading. This is not a magic trick. It uses the biology of the pest against itself. Replace the bait every 5 or 6 days, because it draws moisture from the air and loses its strength. If the lid is in a damp corner, under a leaky pipe or in a basement, the powder will clump and grow a fine gray mold. Check it every few days. If you see any fuzz, any spot of green or gray, throw it out and make fresh bait. And do not expect a vanished colony overnight. The old knowing works with the rhythm of the insects, not against it. You are patient because nature is patient. This is the first way. The second way is for the tiny flies that appear around your fruit bowl every summer, the ones that hover like dust motes in the afternoon light. I keep a small glass jar near the kitchen sink from June until the first chill of October, a leftover jam jar with the label soaked off. I pour in a little apple cider vinegar, maybe half an inch deep, the amber liquid catching the sun. Then I add only 2 drops of liquid dish soap, no more. I stir it with my finger, watching the soap spread like a thin skin over the surface. The apple cider vinegar carries the scent of fermentation, a tangy, sweet rot that whispers of ripe apples fallen to the ground. To a fruit fly, this is the call of birth, the smell of the place where she must lay her eggs. She cannot override it. It is a pull deeper than hunger. She lands on the surface expecting a meal, but the soap has broken the water's skin, that invisible elastic layer. Instead of standing on the liquid as she would on a puddle, her tiny feet supported by surface tension, she falls through and drowns, her wings still for the first time. My wife, who often doubts my old ways, watched me empty a jar one August week with 40 flies inside, a dark cluster at the bottom. She said nothing, but the next morning I found a second jar on the windowsill that she had made herself, placed beside the first like a small salute. I smiled. You must use apple cider vinegar specifically. White vinegar will repel them because its chemistry is different, harsh and unattractive, like a shout instead of a song. And do not cover the jar with plastic wrap poked with holes. I know that version is popular, but the open mouth catches more. I tested both side by side one summer, marking the jars with a pencil, and the open jar caught 3 times as many flies in a day. The flies need a clear path to the scent, no obstacle. Replace the vinegar every 3 days as it loses its scent to the air, the perfume fading. Also, if your kitchen is very infested, place a second jar on the opposite counter. One jar can only reach so far. Mottainai. Do not waste a single fly. Let them teach you the pattern, and then you will know how to stop the next generation before they rise. The third method, and this one I learned through my own stubbornness, is for drain flies. Those tiny, fuzzy moths that hover around the bathroom sink or shower drain, their wings held like a roof over their bodies. They look soft, but they are a sign of something unclean breeding beneath. I fought them in my guest bathroom for months, a small room with pale blue tiles and a single window. I sprayed the adults with vinegar water, but they did not stop returning. Each morning, 3 or 4 would be sitting on the mirror or resting on the faucet, and by evening more had appeared. I was treating the symptom. Then I remembered a story my grandfather told about cleaning the bamboo pipes in the village bathhouse with ashes and vinegar. The old men would pour the mixture down, and you could hear the fizzing echo through the wood. The principle is the same. Drain flies breed in the organic film that builds up inside your pipes, a soft jelly that lines the walls, made of skin cells and soap scum, and the sloughed-off life of many baths. The adults you see are only the winged tips of a nursery hidden below. I poured half a cup of baking soda dry straight down the drain, the white powder falling into the dark. I followed it with half a cup of white vinegar. You will hear it fizz and foam, a hissing like a small animal, a living sound. That foam is physically scrubbing the inside of the pipe, lifting the biofilm where the eggs and larvae live, breaking the jelly into pieces. I let it sit for 20 minutes, watching the bubbles slowly subside. Then I boiled a kettle of water and poured it down slowly, the steam rising golden from the drain. I did this every night for 5 consecutive nights. The 5 nights matter because drain fly eggs take about 2 days to hatch, so you must keep destroying the breeding ground long enough to break the whole cycle, to catch each new wave before they can fly. By the end of that week, the adults were gone because there was nothing left to replace them. The honest caution: if your house is very old and the pipes are metal, do not pour boiling water. Extreme heat can crack old joints and cause a leak you cannot see until it stains the ceiling below. Use the hottest water from the tap, and it will still work. Also, if your infestation is very old, you may also need to clean the outside rim of the drain with an old toothbrush dipped in vinegar, scrubbing where the black ring has formed. But for most homes, the foam and the hot water are enough. You must be thorough, as my grandfather was thorough with those bamboo pipes. The fourth way takes us outside, to the garden, where the air is fresh and the work is harder to see. My wife keeps a small patch of hostas under the big maple tree, those broad green leaves that catch the morning dew and hold it like small pearls. Every spring, the slugs come at night, sliding out from the dark soil, leaving ribbons of silver slime across the stones. They eat holes in the leaves until they look like lace, like a garment ruined by time. Slugs are mostly water. Their body is covered in a slime that must stay moist to let them move, to let them breathe through their skin. Baking soda is a desiccant. It pulls moisture right out, like a thirsty mouth. I learned this from my grandfather's rice fields, where he would sprinkle ash around the seedlings, a thin gray line that looked like a shadow. The ash did the same work. It dried the skin of the slugs and snails. But here I use baking soda. I take a pinch and make a thin ring, no wider than my smallest finger, around the stem of each plant about 2 inches out, a circle drawn in white dust. When a slug tries to cross that line, the soda touches its mucus and begins to dry it. The slug recoils, its body arching, and slides away. Most slugs turn back before they get halfway. The ones that push through usually die within minutes, their soft bodies losing the water that is life. I have stood in the garden with a flashlight at 10 at night, the beam a cone of gold, watching them recoil. The night was cool, the air fragrant with earth, and I saw a slug approach the ring, touch it, and pull back like a hand from a hot pan. My wife says I am a strange old man, standing in the dark with a flashlight and a smile. But her hostas are whole now, all season long, their leaves a deep green without a single hole. The limitation is rain. One good storm washes the baking soda away completely, the powder dissolving into the soil. After any rainfall, you must reapply, a new circle of protection. And do not pour a mountain. Too much baking soda in the soil over time can raise the pH, making the ground too sweet for the plant to drink properly, and the hosta will turn yellow at the edges. A light touch, as my grandfather would say, is the way of all things. And be careful not to let the powder touch the leaves themselves, especially when the morning dew is heavy. The baking soda can burn the tender green, leaving brown speckled spots. Just the ring, as thin as a thread, and the slugs will walk another path. The fifth method comes every spring when the first scout ants appear on the kitchen windowsill, those lone wanderers mapping the land. Ants leave a path, a trail of scent like an invisible highway, a chemical called pheromone that shouts, "Walk this way, food is here." Other ants follow it exactly, their heads down, their bodies in a line. White vinegar, mixed half with water, can wash away that scent. I spray the trail I see, and the ants become confused. They stop, turn in small circles, their antennae waving, then scatter like people in a broken market. But I must tell you plainly, this does not kill the colony. It does not find the queen, hidden deep in the walls or under the slab. It is temporary. The ants will try to find a new route, a new crack in the baseboard. So after I spray, I kneel down and follow the ants backward, away from the food source, my old knees cracking on the floor. I crawl along the baseboard, behind the stove where the shadows are thick, until I find the tiny crack where they are entering, a gap no thicker than a toothpick. Once I find it, I seal that entry with a bead of silicone caulk, the clear kind that dries like glass. The vinegar is the detective, not the judge. I used to spray and walk away, satisfied, and they would be back within 2 days by a different door, a different thin space. I was solving nothing. I was only rerouting them, like a traffic policeman who never fixes the broken signal. The combination of vinegar to erase the sign and caulk to shut the gate is what ends the invasion. I have not had an ant invasion in my kitchen in 8 years now, because every spring I follow the same quiet ritual, the same crouching and sealing. A note of caution. If you see large black ants nearly half an inch long, those are carpenter ants. They do not care about your sugar. They carve tunnels in damp wood. Vinegar will not stop them, and caulk will not trap them. You must find the wet wood they live in, and that often needs a professional eye. For the small sugar ants, the pavement ants, the vinegar is enough. It is a gentle tool for a gentle problem. The sixth method is one I discovered for silverfish, those little silver nibblers that eat the glue in old books and leave yellowed edges like a slow fire. In my basement, I have a shelf of books from my youth, some in Japanese with their soft paper covers, some in English with worn spines. The basement smells of earth and old paper, a scent that is both sweet and sad. I found silverfish chewing the spines, their tiny bodies flicking into the dark when I opened a book, leaving a trail of shreds. I tried diatomaceous earth first, that fine white dust, but I could not dust it between the pages without making a mess, and the powder threatened to stain the paper. So I made a paste. 1 tablespoon baking soda, 1 tablespoon honey, and just enough water to make it thick, like thinned porridge. A brownish cream that smelled faintly sweet. I spread a small smear of that paste onto squares of cardboard, each about 2 inches on a side, cut from an old shipping box. I placed them behind each row of books on the shelf, in the back of the linen closet among the towels, and along the baseboard in the dark corners where the moon never reaches. Silverfish are drawn to the honey, to the sugar it carries. They eat the sweet paste, but the baking soda dries them from inside, the same principle as the roach bait, a slow undoing of their inner water. The paste sticks to the cardboard and stays where I put it, a patient trap. I checked the cards every week, lifting them carefully. Some had small silver bodies nearby, motionless. Within a month, the damage to my books stopped, and the pages I turned were quiet and whole. I keep those cards there still, changing them with the season. One caution: honey can attract ants if you place the cards near a kitchen or a pantry. Keep them in dry, dark places away from food. Also, never let the paste touch the book directly, or it may leave a stain that darkens over time. Lay the card flat behind the books and let the insects come to it. The seventh way is not about killing, but about making your home a place that spiders do not want to be. I do not dislike spiders. In the village, my grandmother would say a spider in the morning brings good fortune, and she would smile at the webs in the eaves. But when they build webs in every corner, and the silk catches dust and the husks of flies, my wife asks me to do something. Spiders taste the world through their feet. They have tiny sensory organs called chemoreceptors, and every surface they walk on is a flavor, a message. White vinegar mixed equal parts with water is sharp and sour to them, a bite they avoid. I spray it along the windowsills, in the corners of the ceiling, behind the furniture, and along the door frames. I do this every 3 days in the warm months, because the vinegar evaporates and loses its bite, its sharpness fading into air. This will not kill egg sacs, and I say this honestly. If you have a dangerous spider, the kind with a red hourglass or a brown violin on its back, call a person who is trained. Do not rely on kitchen remedies for venom. But for the common house spiders, the long-legged cellar spiders that hang like a tassel, and the cobweb weavers that spin messy nests, vinegar is enough. When I find one of these spiders sitting on a wall, I take a cup and a piece of stiff paper, and I gently capture it, carrying it outside to the garden. I let it go among the stones and the thyme. They have their place, eating the small gnats and moths, and I do not wish to harm them. You do not have to kill to be free. You only need to make your home feel unwelcome in their senses, a place they choose to leave. I also vacuum the old webs and wipe away the dust where their food hides. When you remove the small insects they eat, they leave on their own. It is a softer way, and I find that good. The eighth method is perhaps the most overlooked, and it is not about any one pest. It is about becoming invisible to them all. Every kitchen has a layer of food that you cannot see. Grease splatters behind the stove, a fine yellow film that coats the wall. Sugar granules lodged in the seam where the counter meets the backsplash, invisible to your eye but bright to the tongues of ants. A thin film of oil on the range hood, residue of 1,000 dinners. To us the kitchen is clean. To an ant or a roach, it is a feast that calls from across the room, a beacon that never turns off. Their senses are thousands of times sharper than ours. I use a simple mix. Half white vinegar, half water, in a spray bottle that I keep under the sink. Every evening, after the dinner is cleared and the plates are washed, I wipe the counters, the front and sides of the stove, the top of the refrigerator, and the floor along the baseboards where crumbs collect in the crack. The cloth is damp with the vinegar water, and it leaves a clean, sharp smell that fades quickly. This does two things at once. It dissolves the organic residue that attracts pests, the invisible feast, and it destroys the pheromone trails that ants and roaches lay down to guide their colony. I switched from the store-bought cleaners many years ago, not because I am a purist, but because a retired pest man, a gentle fellow named Mr. Adams, told me that his callbacks were always to kitchens that looked spotless, but smelled like a picnic to insects. The heavy floral scents of commercial cleaners covered the human nose, but did nothing to the insect sensors. That conversation stayed with me, a seed planted. This evening ritual takes only 4 or 5 minutes once you have the habit, and it becomes as natural as locking the door. That moment of quiet at the end of the day, the cloth moving across the counter, the vinegar scent like a benediction. It has prevented more infestations than any spray I ever bought. My grandfather said, "A clean threshold invites no thieves." This is true for the six-legged thief as well. But a caution: if you have marble or granite countertops, do not use the vinegar spray every day. The acid, gentle as it is, can etch the polished stone over time, dulling the shine that pleases the eye. On those surfaces, use a soft cloth with warm water and a single drop of mild soap. The vinegar can still be used on the floor, the stove, the baseboards, where the surface is sealed. Know your stone as you would know your soil. The 9th way is a quiet defense for your trash can, which is the single biggest pest magnet in your home. Even with a lid, even with a liner, the smell of rotting food leaks out, a lazy cloud of particles. Fruit flies catch the scent of banana peels. House flies find the faint rot of meat. Roaches and even mice follow that odor from remarkable distances. I have read that an ant can detect a breadcrumb from 50 feet away, navigating by a trail of scent as old as the wind. So every time I change the trash bag, I sprinkle 2 tablespoons of dry baking soda into the empty can before I put in the fresh liner. The baking soda absorbs the sour acidic compounds from the decomposing food, the very signals that draw pests, quieting the call. I also keep a small open jar of baking soda under the kitchen sink, near the trash can, and another one next to the recycling bin where cans and bottles sit with sugary residue, their sweetness a siren song to ants. The baking soda sits there like a silent sponge, drinking in the odors. I replace the jar once a month, dumping the old powder down the drain. My neighbor, a practical woman named Katie, who does not easily believe my old ideas, tried this after she saw me doing it. She came to me a week later and said, "Michael, the ants at my trash can are gone. Not a single one. It is not a poison. It is a blanket thrown over the scent. You cut the invitation before it is sent. That is prevention. Mottainai. Do not throw out your food, and then also throw out your peace by inviting pests to the leftovers. Use the baking soda to quiet the call. But I should say, this does not replace a good scrub. Once a month, take the can outside and wash it with hot, soapy water, scrubbing the corners where the grime collects. The baking soda is a daily shield, not a deep clean. Together, they keep your trash a silent neighbor. Now I promised a bonus at the end, and here it is. I fought a fruit fly problem for 2 full summers. I set traps of apple cider vinegar and caught many, the jars filling with tiny bodies, but the population in my kitchen never went down. I would catch 40 flies and 40 more would appear, fresh and quick, as if the jars were only a net that caught the wind. I was chasing ghosts. Then one day, out of a frustration that felt like a stone in my chest, I lifted the rubber splash guard flaps of the garbage disposal in the kitchen sink. Underneath was a dark, slimy ring of old food, a thick coating that had been building for months, a sludge that smelled of rot and the deep drain. That was the nursery. The flies were hatching right there, their eggs laid in the film, their larvae feeding in the dark. My mottainai heart was heavy. I had wasted effort, wasted patience, wasted 2 summers of frustration, because I did not look deep enough. I began a weekly ritual. I turn off the disposal and unplug it under the sink, for safety. You must always do this. A hand near the blades is a hand at risk. I pull up the rubber flaps and scrub their underside with an old toothbrush dipped in straight white vinegar, the bristles darkening with grime. I scrub the rim of the drain opening too, where the slime has painted a black line. Then I pour 2 tablespoons of baking soda into the disposal, followed by a 1/4 cup of vinegar. You hear that familiar foam, and it climbs up, a white froth, scrubbing the inside of the chamber where the blades and the walls hide the film. I let it work for 10 minutes, the hiss a small song. Then I run hot water for half a minute and switch on the disposal for 5 seconds, the blades whirring, to flush everything out. The change was sudden. My traps that had been catching 40 flies began catching only 2 or 3. The nursery was silent. I remembered my grandfather wiping the rice storage bins with vinegar and rice bran every new moon, saying, "If you want to stop the insects, clean the place where life begins." You cannot win at the nursery by chasing the adults. The disposal is the hidden cradle. Clean it and the flies vanish. It takes only 10 minutes a week, and the reward is a kitchen without the hum of tiny wings. In this fast country, the stores sell you a different device for every small problem. A spray for ants, a fogger for roaches, a plug-in gadget with a blinking light for mice, an ultrasonic box that buzzes at a pitch you cannot hear. My neighbor once paid $100 for a device that promised to chase away mice with sound. He had mice still, scurrying in the walls, and a ringing in his ears that kept him awake. I do not laugh at him. I only see the mottainai, the wasted money, the wasted trust, the wasted peace. The industry has made you forget the free knowing that sits in your pantry, the baking soda and vinegar that cost only a few coins. They promise ease, but they seldom ask you to look first. I say this not in anger, but with a small sigh. Mottainai. What a waste! Not just of money, but of our own power to care for our homes with gentle hands. I have been in this country longer now than I lived in my village, but I carry my grandfather's habits like a lantern through the years. The modern science, with its microscopes and its careful studies, has come around to confirm what he knew without a book. Bicarbonate reacts with acid, the foam breaks the biofilm, the scent is the invisible thread. The answers are still simple, still kind. So we have walked through 9 ways, and the bonus makes 10. The roach bait, hidden in bottle caps, using sugar to call them and baking soda to end them, with the caution to watch for mold. The fruit fly trap, open and patient, with apple cider vinegar and a drop of soap that breaks the water's skin. The drain foam that scrubs the pipes for 5 nights, breaking the nursery of the drain fly. The slug ring, drawn like a spell around your hostas, thin enough not to burn the leaves. The ant trail erased, then followed back to its door and sealed with caulk. The silverfish paste, waiting in the dark on a slip of cardboard but kept away from ants. The spider spray, a kind discouragement that makes your corners unfriendly, and the cup-end paper rescue for those who wander in. The evening kitchen wipe, that removes the invisible welcome mat, with the care for soft stone. The trash can dusting, that hides your scent from the noses of the small. And the disposal deep clean, that stops the nursery. None require a license. None poison the air your grandchildren breathe. Altogether, they form a quiet system, a way of living alongside the creatures that share our world, but keeping them at a respectful distance, a boundary drawn with an old hand. Now I ask you again. Tell me in the comments which of these you will try first. And if your own grandmother or your neighbor taught you a trick I did not mention, please share it. I keep a small notebook by my chair, and I write these things down, each one a gift from another life. I love to collect these old knowings from across the world. Let this be a place where wisdom is not forgotten, where the simple becomes sacred again. Remember, the earth gives us all we need. The box of baking soda, the jug of vinegar, the seeds we plant, the patience we carry. Waste not the old knowledge. In the quiet of your kitchen, you hold the power of 1,000 summers, the knowing of grandmothers and grandfathers who watched the world closely. This is mottainai. To cherish what you already have, and to solve your troubles with a heart that sees. Thank you for spending this time with an old man. I will see you again. Until then, walk gently.